Hello, welcome to our last February chat, February 2023. I feel like the year is already flying by. For those of you that are here from the public Zoom and don't usually do these chats with us, welcome. Thank you for being here. We do these twice a month, and I'll still be letting some people in. So if I look a little distracted, that's why. And it's a chance just to chat with each other and with me about different concepts, different ideas. You're welcome to ask questions. I'll open it up for questions. You can type questions into the chat. You can always unmute yourself and ask questions. I am a Reiki master healer, a spiritual channel. And as of yesterday, actually, I am a certified sound healer. So I'm really excited about that. So I will be able to be bringing sound baths, and I'm a certified now actually in a lot of instruments. So I'll be able to bring all kinds of sound and add that to my healings and my retreats and stuff. So that's something that's really exciting. So yeah, I thank you. So today I am in the woods. For anyone who doesn't know, I am in the woods. I came to the woods to just do what I normally do. If you guys know me, then you know every couple of months I end up in the woods or in the mountains or someplace isolated where I do the healing work that I teach other people how to do, and where I try new techniques, where I explore different things, make myself the guinea pig before I try it on someone else to see what's gonna happen. Ultimately, I believe that we're all a mirror of each other, and we're all an extension of each other. And my experience with myself with this avatar is my case study that I know I have the most experience with. I know this body, this being, better than I know any other being or body, and I can just use it as a case study. And what happens when we try different techniques, when we go within, what does this mean? What does it look like for me? And then from that aspect, I can teach that, and then it may or may not resonate with you. Most of the time, I feel it does resonate because we are so connected. My mom's saying I'm disconnecting. Am I going in and out for everybody or just for her? I'm okay. So I know there's a lot of us in here. I just want to make sure everybody's muted. Beautiful. Okay. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's I hate. It's the hardest thing for me since I've really started to be pulled towards being a spiritual being, since I had my awakening. For those of you who are new, maybe don't know what we are referring to when we're referring to the awakening. Essentially, the idea of an awakening is the idea of understanding that there will come a point in time where you stop thinking of your thoughts as yourself, where you realize that you are the awareness that is watching those thoughts, right? This awareness and this ability to see yourself as a witness consciousness rather than as the stream of thoughts, right, allows there to be space in your experience. And this space allows you to have more of a conscious life where you are not just taking a thought as a fact, where you are not just feeling the need to identify with every single three-dimensional or form-based experience that you're having. So up and until the point of awakening, you'll find that humans are obsessed with form, right? So humans exist on two planes, the form and the formless. So the form, the plane of form, is the plane of the body. How do I look, right? It's the plane of wealth and status. How much do I have and how much am I respected, right? It's also the plane of thoughts. Your thoughts are form, right? They are an electrical impulse. They are a form. They can be traced. We understand where they're coming. We can see the neurons fire. So basically everything that is physical and tangible exists on the realm of the form. And prior to this moment of awakening, and for many people, there is a moment that the lights go on, but awakening actually is quite a long process, right? It's the process of coming to live as this consciousness more and more. And it is a lot of undoing and unlearning. And it can take a really long time, because up and until the point of awareness, the other way of living, where form is the predominant and the only thing that matters, may have gone on for however long it took you to awaken, 20, 30, 40, in some cases 50, 60 years. Some people don't awaken until quite late in their life, right? Most spiritualists believe that the point of awakening is an act of grace or an act of God. It's not something that you can force. It's not something that you can push. It kind of just comes in its time, right? It's also believed that once the process begins, it cannot be undone, but it can be blocked by the ego. So the ego in you is another aspect of it's an aspect of your formless nature that uses your form to manipulate you, right? So it's the voice in your head that's always like trying to convince you that due to lack of form, lack of money, lack of wealth, what your body looks like, what your sexuality is, what your opinions are, whatever is, that either you're not good enough or everybody around you is not good enough, right? It's like you're stupid and everyone else is stupid. It just depends on what day of the week it is, right? It's a lot of oscillating back and forth. The ego likes to play that game. So our society, unfortunately, is a very form-based society, right? When we say the society is a 3D program, what it means is that it's a society that is banking on the majority of humanity being asleep and therefore being obsessed with the form. It's not to say that form is not an important dimension of existence. It's not to say your body doesn't matter at all. It's not to say you have no money, that doesn't matter at all. It's not to say that. It's just to say that the form is not the primary purpose and not the primary experience of humanity, even though the program has tricked us into believing that that is so. It is supposed to be understood that, and what comes to us in this moment of awakening, is that there is an entire other experience happening, a formless experience that is our energy. Some people call it spirit, source, call it chi, you can call it ki, you can call it prana, you can call it anything you want, but it's essentially your life force, right? It's something that is connecting us to what many believe is a divine force, God, universe, source, whoever you believe that it is, Allah, Buddha, it doesn't matter. But there is an energetic experience that actually is the most primary experience. It is the more important experience. It is the experience in which you will access your purpose, right? So you can understand how this can be problematic, right? I mean, you think about anything. You think about thinking, I want to get in shape. What happens? I better start making a food journal. I better start making a diet plan. I better start getting on the treadmill and working out, right? We go directly for the form, things that address the form. I had a thought, I believe it's true, and now I'm in form making it happen, right? How often does that lead to something truly lasting and truly healthful for an individual? I would venture to say never. At least in my own case study, the answer is never. Moments of productivity, sure, you can force anything, right? I can put a dress on Charlie and pretend she's a kid. I could force that for a little while, but eventually this thing is gonna unravel, right? I'm gonna get sick of it. I'm gonna start to become obsessive with it. I'm going to get bored of it. Something is going to unravel this obsession with a form-based response to a form-based thought, right? What I could potentially do differently, and what is rarely ever done without consciousness that really, brings us to that point, is I can notice I feel discomfort somewhere, right? Maybe I'm feeling that discomfort in the realm of my physical body. Maybe it's pertaining to my physical health or my physical fitness or the physical state of my physical body. Maybe that's true. And instead of deciding that must mean I need to lose weight, I need to tone up, I need to this, I need to that, I need to this, I could sit silently. I can notice I had a feeling, and then I can go into stillness, and I can create space between the thought and myself enough that my conscious mind, the mind that is connected to the energy or consciousness that knows more than my logical three-dimensional brain, And I can wait. I can wait for inspiration. I can wait for clarity, and I can wait for an intuitive moment where I can make an informed and conscious decision about how to move forward. Charlie agrees with this. She's with me. Come here, baby. Come here. Charlie, come. She's pissed. Come here. Charlie. Anyway, so we can take a moment, take a beat. We can start to let things give us a little space, give us a little dissolution. That way we can cut some of the crap off, right? Because when something comes, a thought into the mind, and then it automatically goes into the form where the ego lives, it's possible that even though our motive was of a pure nature when we started the endeavor, that it can easily become polluted by the ego that lives in this form dimension, right? We can become obsessed with doing something our way, right? The form is the human doing. The formless is the human being. And when you let everything come from the formless dimension, the action that you take will not only be more effective, but it will be more aligned, and it will feel better to you. It will be less of a battle, right? One of the words we use and throw around a lot is the word discipline. And I've been speaking about this a lot, in that discipline is an important trait, but maybe not in the way that we've believed it to be when we were in the dimension of form, right? Most of us learned the word discipline when we were sleeping, when we were, dictated only by form. How do I look? How much money do I have? What am I doing? Right? Like how am I making a mark on the world? That's the form. That's the ego that has an obsession with these things. And most of us learned the word discipline while we were obsessed with this way of being. And so we assumed for discipline to mean that we make a choice and we see it through to the bitter end, no matter what, right? If you decide you're getting up every morning to run at 6 a.m., then you better get up and run, right? That's discipline. But actually, as you start to really awaken, you become very averse to this kind of experience. You start feeling like, I don't like this at all. I feel trapped. I feel manipulated. This is not in alignment with me at this time. I'm allowing myself to be a being that is changing constantly, that is upgrading rapidly, that has different feelings and needs every single day, because I am in an environment that is constantly changing. And the need to stick to a plan that I made a week ago and therefore live in a past version of myself doesn't work. It's not working, which for a lot of people is why having to consistently do things that they decided before this point, right? Before this moment, which blocks you from connecting to yourself in this moment, right? Things start feeling out of alignment pretty fast. We start getting bored pretty fast. We start losing motivation pretty fast, because what I think we're supposed to be disciplined to is the inner being. We're supposed to be disciplined to the self that is the awareness that is telling you, look, if we've given you a goal, if we've given you a message and put it on your heart to accomplish it, then you have to trust that we are also going to give you the vehicle through which to accomplish it. Even if it doesn't look the way you anticipated that it would look, or even if it's not the way it looks that people that are in the form or in sleep or are unconscious are making it look, right? It's not because that's not effective. If you wake up every day and run at 6 a.m., you're going to get effective. You're going to run a little bit better. You may lose some weight. You may get some tone. It'll work, right? We're not saying it doesn't work. We're just saying maybe it doesn't feel so good. Maybe it doesn't do what we're hoping it'll do, right? Maybe it would be better if we could wake up and tune in and speak to the body and let the being dictate the doing, rather than the other way around, rather than waking up and doing and then assuming that that's going to connect us back to the self. Most of the time that fails. And most of the time that is the reason that when you get to the accomplishment, you're kind of like, cool, now what? Like, That's it. Like, there's nothing here, right? And I think it's a simple switch that is the most difficult switch that we'll ever really make. Especially for me. When I was in my sleep, when I was in my form-based experience, I was a grade A just doer. I just love to do stuff. I love a schedule. I love to say I'm doing this here and there. Now I've got to make a list of stuff I'd like to do, and I've got to wait for inspiration to hit me. I can't check the things off and just be like doing it because I'm doing it. Do you know how annoying that is to me? Like, I hate that. I hate it. My ego hates it. My program hates it. I am at war with it constantly. But at the end of the day, the truth is, when I go and I wait for someone, whoever is communicating with me, I do believe it's God, to speak to me, whatever they speak to me, I do it faster, more efficiently, with more joy and enthusiasm, more fun. It's easier, and it leads to something I actually can use and enjoy and helps me fulfill my purpose. And I'm like, why am I fighting with this? Why am I fighting with this to do things my shitty way that I don't even like? I don't even want to do it this way. I just don't want to not do it my own way. You know, I want to be stubborn and I want to be right. And that is the ego, right? That is the form. And for a lot of us, the ego is strong because we've trained it to be strong. We've listened to it for such a long time and we've obliged it for such a long time. And so it's an expert at manipulating us into doing these things. But I really encourage you to look at what you're doing and ask yourself if, when you get the feeling that the path or the plan needs adjustment, how quickly and how easily are you truly tuning in and asking to show me the adjustment, right? How often are you really doing that versus going to war with yourself and being like, damn, I didn't do what I planned to do today. And that means I'm a failure and I'm lazy. And I didn't eat what was on the schedule and I didn't go on the run and I didn't, in the past, even having not to teach classes this week on Thursday and Friday, when that was the plan, when I was supposed to teach and I didn't teach last week, 3D me would have lost her mind. Like, there's no way I couldn't do it. But at this point in time, I felt very heavily that I needed to separate from an experience so I could get clarity, so I could get some peace, so I could heal aspects of my body that are in healing, and that I could ultimately become more valuable to the structures that I'm in. And it's like, if you think about that exchange of 1 week of time or however long they ask me to give in order to actually move with more purpose and more connection and be of more value in whatever space that I'm in and feel better myself as an individual, is it a sacrifice even? It's silly to think that I would impose a need to do something because I planned it and I have to be there over a clear calling, a clear shift in my being that's asking me to pay attention to it. Is this making sense? Does anybody have any questions about what I'm saying so far? Now she's pissed because she heard I was going to put her in a dress. I could. Come here, Stacey. Come say hi to the peeps. Come here. Let me tell you something. Charlie loves when we do weeks in the forest. You sleeping? Isn't she just so pretty? Good Lord. I won't put you in a dress. Okay. So yeah, so that's something I really wanted you guys to think about. I wanted to read you this. I was reading, I love Eckhart Tolle. If you guys don't know that, then you know it now. One of the people I listen to, or I have learned a lot from in the course of my path. And this is one of the parts of his book that I hate the most. So I wanted to share it with you to see if you also hate it. And see what your thoughts are on it. It is a full scale. I felt personally victimized by Eckhart Tolle when I read this, and I was just like, I hate this. This is me and everyone I know, and like, it's just tragic. So I'm going to read it to you because it's horrible. The title of the section is called "Lose Yourself to Find Yourself." So it says, whenever you relinquish one of your behavior patterns, inner space emerges. You become more truly yourself. To the ego, it will seem as if you're losing yourself, but the opposite is the case. Jesus already taught that you need to lose yourself to find yourself. When you let go of one of these patterns, you de-emphasize who you are on the level of form, and who you are beyond form emerges more fully. You become less so you can become more. This is the part I hate. Here are some ways in which people unconsciously try to emphasize their form identity. You can just keep a little tally of how guilty you are of doing all of these things. And you can also try to consider if you know a single human being on the planet that's not doing these things. I would love to hear about it if you know anyone, because I don't, and I hate it. Anyway, here are some ways in which people unconsciously try to emphasize their form identity. If you are alert enough, you may be able to detect some of these unconscious patterns within yourself. Demanding recognition for something you did and getting angry or upset if you don't get it. Trying to get attention by talking about your problems, the story of your illnesses, or making a scene. Never done that. Giving your opinion when nobody asks for it, and it makes no difference to the situation. Sure, none of us have ever, you guys have never done that, I'm sure. Being more concerned with how the other person sees you than with the other person, which is to say, using other people for egoic reflection or as ego enhancers. Trying to make an impression on others through possessions, knowledge, good looks, status, physical strength, and so on. Bringing about temporary ego inflation through angry reactions against something or someone, taking things personally, feeling offended, making yourself right and others wrong through futile mental or verbal complaining, wanting to be seen or to appear important. I feel like a lot of us.
No, stop.
Jenna's having a fight with someone, not on mute.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. But yeah, is anyone guilty of any of those things? Reaffirming their form identity with any of those behaviors? I feel like I read that and I was like, yikes. Did you get a full score? Mariana said, first time I've ever gotten a full score on anything. 100%. Everyone got 100% on all the ways their ego is doing these things. I hated it so much. I read it and I was like, this is so annoying. So he goes on to say, once you've detected such a pattern within yourself, I suggest you conduct an experiment. Find out what it feels like and what happens if you just let go of that pattern. Just drop it and see what happens. De-emphasizing who you are on the level of form is another way of generating consciousness. Discover the enormous power that flows through you into the world when you stop emphasizing your form identity. This is hard, man. It is very hard to not be in the game of proving that you are right and that you are valuable and that your points are valid, of not wanting people to see you a certain way, especially now with Instagram and social media being such a weight. It's very difficult. And honestly, I would venture to say that the only chance we have to really move forward down a path like this, where we can just drop it and let things go and not feel the need to continue having conversations like this, is find more stillness, find more ability to choose to be silent or be still, or realize that when we find ourselves needing to justify or defend ourselves, we end up in a game of the ego that is trying to reinforce itself over and over again. We have to allow ourselves to just be sometimes. I think we've become afraid that if we are not so vocal and if we are not so aggressive and if we are not so dominant in saying like, this is who we are, that the world is going to try to tell us who we are. But that can only happen if we're listening, and actually in the process, most of us are not who we are anyway. Most of us are a reflection of what society or the world has decided we should be, right? We're wearing the clothes they're telling us to wear. We're fighting the battles they're telling us to fight. We're making the decisions they're telling us to make, all the while trying to prove that, no, we're not. We're independent and we're sovereign, and our thoughts are our thoughts and our opinions are our opinion. And in the process getting further and further from the truth of the self, which is that you are not your opinions, you're not your thoughts, you're not your habits, you're not your body, you're not your name, you're not your sexuality, you're not your gender. You are some infinite force, some infinite energetic current that we can't even measure or find, that is causing life in your body right now. And that is likely going to outlast, right? Most people believe that whatever this formless nature is transcending time, right? It was before, it existed before you were born into the physical body, and it will exist after you pass on, which is the belief that life continues after death, whether you believe that that's in reincarnation or you believe it's in another realm, you believe in heaven, whatever you believe in, right? There is an understanding that there is something about you that persists, that endures, and that ultimately that must be the root of the truth of your experience. So how does this relate to your purpose, right? I think it relates to your purpose and understanding that most of us make our purpose an outward thing, right? We make our purpose about a doing. And while the doing can be connected to your purpose, right? Everything that's born in the formless ultimately does interact with the world through the form, right? If I have a feeling or a thought and I want to communicate it, then my voice, which is form, right, which is a vibration, must meet another form. Otherwise, this can't happen. So it's not, like I said, it's not that the formless should be completely ignored, but rather that when I worry about my purpose, first, I must speak to the formless dimension and find the depth, the inner meaning. We don't go deep enough. You know, I came to find too, I had a dream the other day that made me aware of this. When I ask people what their purpose is, one of the purposes that comes up a lot, and one of the purposes that I used to speak a lot, was to help others. And if you think about it, then my purpose on the planet would be contingent on people needing help, right? Like I can't live my purpose unless there's people that are struggling. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like that's not true. That's not what I mean. And what then if I help everyone that can be helped and no one needs help anymore, then I have no purpose. I'm useless. So like that also comes to a point that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think realistically, helping others is a way that we enact purpose, but we mistake it for the purpose. And it's why people have a lot of trouble transitioning, right? And why people have a lot of trouble moving from thing to thing. What I'm ultimately saying is I think your purpose is so large and expansive that it will cover a variety of form experiences, right? So you'll be able to enact it through a lot of different things, and they'll change and they'll shift, right? You might be a parent for some time, and caring for your children might help you enact your purpose, but then those children will grow up and not need the same care. And therefore, the way you can continue to enact the same purpose will shift to another thing, right? Or maybe it's happening in many different spheres at the same time, but because we are on a temporal experience, things die and change and shift constantly. So you have to kind of be aware of that. You know what I mean? I think ultimately the deep purpose is consciousness, awareness, connection to God, and love, right? Like things like this are the purpose on the planet. The ways that you can find use your form to bring them to the world and interact with the world in that purpose, there's probably an infinite amount of ways you can be doing that in any moment. And for some reason, we don't see it that way. You know, we get really married to one thing. You know, I've heard people say all the time, like, being a dancer is my purpose. And I'm always like, that's impossible. There's no way. There's no way you were born and like someone put a dancer on your forehead and that's it. Get out there. And if you do anything else, you become a dentist, you're a priest, you're a nun, forget it. You've missed it. You're screwed up. Your whole life is wasted because you did not fulfill your dancer destiny. That doesn't make any sense. Like I can't get on board with that. That's way too form-based. It's way too doing-based. It doesn't make sense that that's your purpose, right? Is dance something you can do that can help you bring your purpose to the world? Absolutely. You know, you can make connection, you can tell a story, you can move people. There's a lot of beautiful things you can do with art, and art can be very well tied to your purpose. Art may very well be tied to everybody's purpose because we are creators by nature, right? So yeah, but there's also there's so many other things, right? The world is moving so, and it's everything is so expansive. So it's like, can you connect to the being first, and from the state of being, do? that is, I think, how you live your purpose on the planet and how you get really clear about what your purpose is. If you don't do it this way, then the means corrupts the end, right? Somehow the path that you choose becomes corrupted by the ego because you are too heavy in the form and not enough in the formless. You lose connection to the truth of yourself. And when you do that, even if you are, this can happen even when you're already awakened, right? The ego is a very intelligent aspect of your being. So it knows how to manipulate you. And while awakenings cannot go backward, they can become paused, right? They can be halted by the ego. The ego can slow it. So ultimately, the process of protecting your awakening is a lot about the process of recognizing the ego. And we've talked about it before, that that's all that's required for you to battle the ego, is just to recognize it, just to know that this is my ego. This is an obsession with time. This is an obsession with money. This is an obsession with the way my body looks to other people. This is an obsession with the way other people view me. This is an obsession with being right. This is a fear of death. All of that any of that is an ego issue. And the more awareness we have, the more space we create. And so that's why I'm always encouraging you guys to find some stillness, find some quiet in a world that's moving fast, where you're inundated with opinions and information. Take that 15 minutes in the morning to just sit quietly with yourself and wait for intuitive guidance on how to move through the day. Question habits. I think habits is another thing that we really I think we overweigh form habits and we underweigh formless habits. Like, most people have a habit of, like, they can't live without their cup of coffee. Every morning I have my cup, every day I have to go to the gym. But how non-negotiable is it that every day you connect to yourself? Every day you really go within and find some quiet and some stillness, speak to God, speak to source, check on yourself. Am I still on the path? Is this corrupted in any way? Am I happy? How much discipline are we putting in that? How much of a habit is that non-negotiable? Most people are checking in with themselves like once a month, maybe, or most people check in with themselves when things go wrong. You wait for the whole train to get derailed. And when you're like, that went really poorly, then you're like, maybe we better check in with the control center, but maybe we stop doing that. Maybe we start realizing that has not worked. It has been a recipe for failure, and in a lot of cases, disaster. And maybe we just learn to accept some of the uncertainty of what comes when we realize we are changing beings and we are in a changing universe. One of my favorite things that scares a lot of people, but doesn't scare me because I think it's a beautiful thing, is, most astrophysicists believe that the universe began in a bang, in a moment, whether you call that the Big Bang or whatever you call it. And from that moment that created the universe that we live in, it began to expand, right? And it's understood that the universe expands to a point, and at some point in time, it will begin to contract until it goes back to nothing. And that's the way most things exist in nature, especially ourselves, right? From the moment that we're born, we begin a period of expansion. That is growth. That is becoming more and more and more, until we begin a period of contraction that will lead back to the point of death, which from a spiritual perspective is the same point as birth, a transition. So we are mirroring the universe, right? A lot of people believe that we are the physical embodiment of the universe, or of God that created that universe. And the universe is learning about itself through us and teaching us through it, right? So it's a connection. And this goes a lot into what we talked about last week about the planet, about Earth. It's no different, right? The planet, the universe, the cosmos, there is a communication here. We are in communion with them. We are nature ourselves. People forget that very deeply. I'll never forget, I was younger and I was in a healing with a shaman, and she was asking me, what's the closest thing you can go to when you want to go to nature? And I was like, oh, to the beach, or, outside in the park. And she was like, no, what's the closest thing to you all the time? And I was like, trees. She was like, no, you. And I was like, Oh yeah. I guess so. I guess I am a living natural being. What do you know, right? But I was not getting there. Like I was never going to see it that way until I did. And now I can't see it any other way. And my cycles and my life really very much is in communion with nature and the natural cycles. And, you know, we've learned about all of these things at some point or another in the app, right? I've taught you about the Schumann resonance, the resonance of the planet, which is somewhere around 7.8 hertz. And the sound is basically bathing the planet and keeping everything in harmony, right? It's these concepts that make sound healing a valuable tool, right? Understanding that everything in this universe, according to superstring theory, is vibrating. Everything's vibrating matter. And everything is in a vibrational relationship with itself and with each other. So kind of just zooming out and seeing life in this way as a much bigger, more expansive experience than we're having when we make our lives about little doings every day. I must do this, I must do that, I must do this, I must do that. You know, I think the biggest error we make is we become so obsessed and we become so lost in the doing that we are no longer being. And I just think it's been the hardest thing for me to undo. You know, in the morning, sometimes I have to literally like strap myself to the bed because I want to get up and I get up in the mornings and I do X, Y, and Z. And it's my soul is like, girl, you need to sit still for a second so we could tell you what to do today. Can you chill? You know, like, and I'm like, you know, like, okay, you know, let me try to center myself. And, you know, I'm subject to all the same things. And my program was very deep. And my program got me a lot of three-dimensional success, as you've seen. But I don't believe it's the only way to three-dimensional success. I don't believe it's the only way to accomplish wealth or affluence or any of these things. And I don't think these things are bad or things we should not desire or we can't have. I just don't believe that the way we've been programmed to go after them is necessarily the way that creates harmony in the body and harmony in the universe and allows you to enact your purpose. And if we really understand things, we begin to understand the only reason we want these things in the first place, or we desire these things in the first place, is because we do have an understanding that we have a purpose and we really come here with a desire to enact it, right? We just get mixed up and we get confused and we mistake the having and the things as the purpose itself. And I think that's what causes a lot of discontent and why it's why we see a lot of celebrities and wealthy individuals suffering sometimes more greatly than people who have less. And it's because they get to the end of that path of doing and accomplishing and having, and they're like, I'm miserable. I don't feel connected to self. I feel maybe more disconnected to self than ever because I've been purposely telling myself, shut up, shut up, shut up, whenever I get an instinct that's like, maybe this ain't it. Maybe this is wrong. Maybe this is too intense. Maybe this is not the calling. Maybe we should move. Maybe we should this. Maybe we should that. Quiet, quiet, quiet. That's not on the plan, right? And in disengaging with the self over a long period of time, we lose the self that way. You know, it gets harder and harder to hear. It gets harder and harder to connect with. And it does unfortunately make most of the things that we acquire and accomplish feel pointless because we were never seeking the accomplishment in and of itself, right? We were seeking the enactment of purpose through the accomplishment. And unfortunately, that is something that cannot just be accomplished with the doing, right? The doing will get it done. The being will get it done properly. So I think it's something that we have to start to prioritize so that we don't keep getting into situations where we get places and we're disappointed and we work so hard at something only to feel unfulfilled. You know, everything in the world is coming and going. So even if you fought to be the best at something for a moment, ultimately that would be short-lived. And if your purpose was to be the best, what happens in the next moment when you're not the best anymore? Right? I guess your purpose is over. Like, so what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, the only moment we really have is now. And we have to get to purpose through now. We can't constantly be making decisions for the future. I'm doing this now so that later on I can this and that. Later on I can this and that. You know, the promise of a future experience is always ego-based, unfortunately, because the soul, your connection to God, your connection to source, there's only one doorway to that connection, and it's right now in this moment. So every thought that pulls you out of this moment and puts you in a future self is actually disconnecting you from the truth of yourself and the truth of who you are and the connection that you need back to source consciousness or back to God. And we feel that, I think. We feel that. We just don't know what to do about it because the program runs so strongly in it. And everyone around you reinforces the program, right? I tell you what, I can't have a conversation with people anymore because all they want to know is, what am I doing next? What about this? What about next year? What about tomorrow? I'm like, y'all, I don't know. You know, all I know about is this moment. I'm in a Zoom having this call. I don't know about tomorrow. I don't even know what's happening when this is over. I just know I'm on a Zoom. I'm having a conversation. That's really all I can tell you about. I don't know what's coming next. Because I believe fully that if I allow myself to trust and to be led by God, by source, if I allow my body to open up and be in communication with God and source at every moment, then I have to also, if I have faith, right? The word faith is key. Then that involves understanding that wherever I'm being called to be in this moment is my purpose in this moment. May my purpose be larger than this over the course of my life? Yeah. But right in this moment, this is my purpose. And this is the only purpose that matters. And this is the only thing that matters right in this moment. It doesn't matter where it's going or what it'll become. It just matters what it is right now. And if I stay here and if I listen, right, this is the act when I say of being a channel, ultimately it's the act of being present and letting information be channeled through me because my egoic mind is silenced and it's not asking me to validate this decision. It's not forcing me to look into the future of this decision. It's quiet. And because it's quiet, I can hear source speaking through me and speaking to me in this moment. The second I wander out of this moment and start worrying about later, tomorrow, or the past, then I lose my connection with the source that is. So faith is understanding that even if I don't understand exactly what's happening in each moment, that the God that I trust to lead me is loving and wants me to succeed in what they are trying to put on my heart to accomplish. And I have to, if I want to receive, then I have to keep my hands open to receiving. I can't keep them tightly wound and saying, no, my way, no, my way, no, my way, right? And times that I have lived like that, like I said, have I accomplished the physical of things? Sure. Did I also live with extreme anxiety and discomfort? Absolutely. Did I manage to attract a lot of people that really caused difficulty for me and were not positive and were not loving? Yes. Did I, make things much harder for myself? Sure. Did I battle constantly with my mind, with my body, with the outside world? Was I always mad at somebody? Yeah. And it's like, I just believe now there's another road, the road less traveled, maybe they call it that. But I believe there is another road that leads to a lot of the same places, maybe a little higher, maybe a little higher up, a little less staticky. But I think we can still get to these precipices and these things that we want and that we desire. I just think it might be worth a look at doing them differently. But that's just my opinion. How are you guys feeling? What do you think? What's happening in the chat? Oh, Katie wrote me. Let's read Katie's. Find that like right now, I'm trying to make a decision of going out somewhere when I don't really want to go, as it doesn't bring me excitement or joy in the environment. Even though I want to be there and present with the group, the experience doesn't make me feel that way. But on the other side, openness is good. However, I'm trying to make the decision based on how others may feel about the decision and how it reflects back on me, like you mentioned in the book. Never really realized that could be an ego way, just like how do I go about that? Even considering balancing that I love others and deciding that may be the ego. So, I mean, Katie, I would just say, you know, we talk about this a lot too. For a lot of people where the fear program is running very strictly, you can't just go on your gut instinct with something. Because if you have been cultivating your fear program, your ego program, a lot of people say, oh, your gut instinct is always right. That's actually not true at all, right? If your gut instinct, if you are in the throes of an anxiety disorder or a depressive episode, your immediate reaction to things could very well be a fear-based program that's running. It was for me when I was in the throes of an anxiety disorder, and it is still occasionally for me, right? But I will say that fear-based or egoic or anxious or depressed or whatever other type of thoughts come up in the program, they carry a specific feeling with them. And you can kind of tell, okay, it makes you pause a second. Is that really how I feel? Or am I just anxious? Am I just afraid? Am I just having this issue, right? It's not always the exact right thing. Sometimes it needs a little more stillness, a little more space. The fact is your intuitive response won't waver. Your intuitive response, the response that is coming from source, will not waver. It will come back to its truth time and time again. So you don't have to worry about creating space, right? So fear-based thoughts don't like space. So when you have a thought that comes from an anxious nature, for example, it tries to convince you, let's act on this right now because we don't want to think about it. This is bad and we're not going, right? It tries to stop you from sitting in stillness because it wants you to act right now and listen to the fear. Because space and consciousness being our connection to source, is a threat to anxiety or fear or ego, right? Because if you sit and create space, the truth of whatever the experience is will be revealed to you. And if it is against the ego, then the ego will lose that fight, and the ego fucking hates that. So what I'll say is sitting in stillness and sitting in space, as long as it takes to come steady on a response, is never going to work against you. So if you sat for a few minutes and you were like, oh, maybe I should go, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should go, maybe I shouldn't, the answer is sit still. Don't do either thing, right? Universe and source and God doesn't talk to you this way. There is no this, that, and the other thing with sheer chaos. That's the logical brain making decisions based on the form and the external. The truth of whether or not this resonates with you sits right here, right? So you come to stillness, you take some breaths, you decide how you feel about something. Wait for a feeling to come to you without forcing it, without trying to control it. If nothing comes, get up, do something else, read a few pages of a book, and try again. Tune back in. Play some therapeutic sounds and then tune back in. Get up, wash your face, tune back in, right? Like, keep coming back to the self as long as it takes, right? We're out of practice with this. We're out of space with this. We're so big on, I got to know right away. And the truth is, as you develop this skill, yeah, the gut instinct and your intuition, as it is restored to you in the way that it should have always been operating before we blocked it, it will start working really fast. But it will come with it a feeling of peace, a feeling of, I know this is it. I know this is the answer. It's not the answer you may want to hear. It's not the answer I even maybe wanted to give, but I know this is the answer, right? Like, I had so much peace about not teaching my classes this week. My ego hates it. The aspects of me, other people hated it. They wanted me to be there. Other people that have expectations of me had hated it, but I just know it's not where I'm supposed to be. It was a knowing, and it was an instantaneous knowing that this is what I needed to do. So yeah, over time, as you continue to reinforce these aspects of yourself and strengthen them again back to the way that connecting yourself is the way that we're normally being, then yeah, it may come quickly like a gut instinct, but not always, right? So I would just say, yeah, my mom didn't like that I didn't teach. She was a little surprised because no one's used to me, acting in any way that's not outwardly the one that is always doing exactly the way, it's set out to be. I get it. I get that every time I change my form, that's hard on everyone that knows me because now they have to readjust, right? If they're in the business of trying to be rigid, then they're trying to hold me into a rigid shape. And every time I change form and shape shift, I piss them off. It's like, damn, now you're different, and now I got to be different to be different with you. And it's a pain in the ass when you have friends that are ascending and shape shifting. Because it means work for everyone all the time. And I get it. But it is just what it is. I don't know why things are this way. I didn't pick it. I'm just trying my best to work with it. You know, I'm working with what we got. Like, this is the truth of things. I didn't make it this way. I didn't make this decision. I don't know why the hell we all signed up for this in the first place, if you ask me. But I'm just doing my best to, you know, get out there and work with what we got, what's in our experience. So yeah, I would just say more quiet. And then the true answer is the true answer. If it feels like stay home, then stay home, you know, and don't feel the need to justify that to anyone or yourself. If it feels like go, you know, universe communicates in very simple terms. She's a simple girl, you know, she's like, go, nah. She don't want to give you a whole story. You know, we've talked about this in the past too, like your intuition and your connection with God. They don't give you a lot of rambling details. I get a lot of one word. You know, I have a whole list of messages that have been delivered to me over time, and they're like one word tidbits. Like, you don't get a lot of like, we want you to do this because X, Y, and Z. And then, you know, this person's not going to like it, but it's okay because later on down the road, they're like, just go, shut up, you know, like get out there. You'll see why, right? So just remembering to like, wait for a response in your soul that is still, that is constant, and that feels aligned, right? Knowing the difference, we know what a little bit of fear feels like. Sometimes the aligned decision comes with a little bit of fear, a little bit of, I don't really know what to expect. There's a difference between a little bit of fear in alignment and, oh my God, this is not for me, wrong move. You know, I'll tell you, last week in one of my really fun experiments I pulled with myself, I told you guys I felt I should not have gone to the Netherlands, that was a big mistake, that I was being told not to go, but I went anyway. You know me, I just think it's funny. It was such a disaster, man. I had the worst experience I've ever had anywhere. But at this point, it was funny to me. It's funny. I know it's not funny to Danny, but it's funny to me because I am constantly testing whether these concepts that I'm teaching are correct. If I don't test them, then I don't know. So like I said, I am the guinea pig. And so, you know, I had this thought in my mind that was like, well, at least if it's a disaster, I'll get paid. You know, God loves that thought. But I was just like, you know, I'm being playful. It's my playful nature. He did not like that. So it was a horrible trip from start to finish. It was absolutely a cold-blooded, disastrous experience. And it was funny though, because when I got to the hotel, I got into my room, and so while I had been on the plane and I was flying out there, I had this really foreboding feeling that was like, wow, this is the first time in a long time that you've purposely gone against an instinct. I have been afraid to go against an instinct, and I didn't like that I was afraid to go against an instinct. So I was like, let me go against it and see what happens. And I was on the plane and I was like, this is what happens. This is horrible. Just like, I felt horrible. I felt like I was literally being dragged like this the whole time. I couldn't breathe. I was dense. I was like having really dark visions. It was just a disaster. And so I'm still the whole time being like, let's just see if we can control things. Let's see if we can control our attitude. Let's see if we can control our mood. You know, let's see what happens. I'm really interested. I'm like a little scientist out here. And I'm thinking, and so I'm calming myself while I'm getting my baggage once I get to the Netherlands, telling myself, you're not that important. It's not like Source is just sitting with you this weekend to prove that you shouldn't have gone here. Like, they're doing other things. Like, there's billions of people on the planet in much bigger situations than this. Like, they're not going to be here, like, worrying about you like you're the most important person, you know. Come on. Like, it may not be a great trip, but they're not going to be here like with you, you know, to prove that you shouldn't have done this. So mind your business and just get through the weekend. So I take my little bag, I get a coffee. I'm like, we're fine. Everything's fine. So I get in the car and I'm talking to the host, and I'm realizing, oh no, this is worse than I even anticipated it was going to be. And the host was weird, and it was just a disaster. And I get to the hotel, and on my desk, there's a letter from the hotel that says, Dana, you are a very important person. You are this weekend's VIP guest. And as our VIP guest, and they don't know who I am, so it's not because I'm Dana Alexa, I just randomly got selected for an upgrade to be that weekend's VIP guest. And I was going to get all kinds of special attention. And they put me on like, it was like, here's a view of the river, so you could see the river flowing. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, this is too much. It's too far. Universe said, here's a view of flow. Just in case you forgot what flow was. You'd like, it's the fucking Rhone River or whatever the hell it is. It's flowing past your window. So you're going to suffer this week and you're going to watch Flow and you're going to remember Flow, our good friend Flow. And we'll see you on Monday when you wrap this up. But I just could not believe that I was like, I'm not that important. They're not gonna, there's a lot of other things to worry about. Not big thing. VIP, you're the very important guest of the weekend. I was like, oh no. Oh, it was a tragedy. But it allows me to come back here and remind you, don't do that. Trust what I'm saying. Don't do that. When you get signs that you shouldn't do something, don't do that. Don't do it. Don't go. Trust me. And if you do, just be prepared to know that you are that important and you are constantly being communicated with and you are constantly being, taught whatever you need to be taught. So don't do it. But, go ahead and do it if you want. I'm fine. I mean, I made it through, but I wouldn't recommend it. There's much easier ways to learn and to be in communion with yourself. So don't 10 out of 10 do not recommend. I feel, my mom said, I feel I may have another place to be, but I have to be disciplined to go to work and make money to live. I get that. Everybody has the same issues with there is a formless experience. We can't be all spiritual woo-woo and pretend we don't need to pay a bill. What do we do when the money runs out? I get it. I'm not saying live in such a way that you end up without $1 to your name and you live under a bridge, even though I don't know that that would be such a negative experience. What I am saying is, do we trust that if you trust or if you believe that there is a spiritual experience happening on the planet, there is a God, there is a source energy, there is a cosmic knowing, whatever you call it, right? Some people believe it's just a scientific phenomenon. It's just some aspect of our brain. Okay, but even if it is just scientific, then everybody knows that a being, a scientific being, right, a tribal being, whatever you want to call it, is going to always seek its own survival. So whatever this is that we should be leaning into will ultimately be leading you towards survival, not towards death, right? So it knows you need food and you need water and you need air and you need these things to survive. So it'd be very strange for a being to be working against itself and giving it messages on how to die, right? You'd be getting messages on how to survive at the least, at the bare minimum. So that's a whole other way of looking at it. But say you do believe in a spiritual experience and you do believe in a benevolent God that has put you here for a purpose, why would tuning into that God and asking that God what is best for you lead you down a path that leads to you having no resources and ultimately perishing, unless there was something there for you that you really needed to uncover? What if the path that your life is on really needs a stop, reboot? Maybe you need a moment without things or without money, and then it could be returned to you tenfold. Like, are we not willing to sacrifice a current experience ever? And if we're not willing to sacrifice our current experience ever, then how much are we really willing to do to become who we're supposed to be? Are willing to sacrifice an Oreo cookie so that we can look a certain way, but are we willing to trust that the messages and the feelings and the intuitions that we have and the things that we're being called towards are coming from a God or a source or an entity that is love and that is positive? And if so, I think once you start living that way and you start seeing the way it plays in your life and the way it treats you in your life and the way your life unfolds magically, it's hard to not know it that way. But if we're not willing to put down what we have now, if we're not willing to trust that this being, this energy, this consciousness, this intelligence would not be asking us to move this way unless there was something we needed down that route, like, you know, if we're not willing to accept that, then how much are we willing to actually, are we willing to live at all? Or are we just wanting to survive? Are we just wanting to be on the path that we have? And that's not necessarily wrong or right. It's just that if we're making that choice to not put down what we have because we don't trust and we don't want to know what's there or where we're being led, then would it maybe make sense then that we should be at least in acceptance of the experience that we're having now and not at war with it? Most people are unwilling to put down what they have, but still sit in hatred of what they have. It's not enough, and I don't like it, and I don't want to be here, but I'm not willing to put it down, and I'm not willing to move. And it's like, then you're kind of forcing yourself into a life of suffering, of hating the current moment, but being unwilling to sacrifice it. I mean, you know, a lot of people would say, if you don't think you have enough, then what's the point? What's the reason we wouldn't put it down? What's the risk? Maybe we get back less than not enough. I mean, well, you know, it's just kind of like, at that point, if you are truly making a choice, you have to acknowledge that you're making a choice, and then not be at war with that choice, because you'll burn out your energy and live in misery, rather than live a life that feels any good. You know, if it's like, I acknowledge I could do this, or I could take this risk, or I could try this thing, or I could go to this place I feel called to go. I could, but I don't want to, or I don't trust it, or I don't choose it. That's okay. That's your free will. But then to stay in the current experience and hate it and have violence or anger towards it is an interesting choice. Weird flex. You know what I mean? Like, well, you kind of gotta try to have a good feeling about it. So one of the spiritual belief that actually I really enjoy speaks that we should do things 3 ways or not at all. So one of these 3 ways or not at all. So the 3 ways are with acceptance, with enthusiasm, or with enjoyment. So you should be able to enjoy what you're doing and just really love it, have fun with it. Or you should be really enthusiastic about taking on this task or doing this thing. Or you should be able to accept that this is something that you are doing, that you want, that you have to do, right? And if you can't do it any one of those ways, then you shouldn't do it at all. So I think that's something that I try to apply as much as possible, right? At first, coming into the woods was something I could really only accept. I wasn't enthusiastic about it this time. I was just like, I accept that I need to rest, and I need to heal, and I need to go within, and I accept that. I can feel that that's the truth, and I accept it. But then once I got here, I got kind of enthusiastic about it. I was like, ooh, I'm getting information and things are coming through, and I kind of like it, right? And now I just straight up enjoy it. I just really like it. I'm waking up here every day and I'm like, you know, this feels good to me, right? And maybe mine progressed in that way, but it doesn't always. Sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes you start with something with enjoyment and then you end up with acceptance, and you're like, all right, well, it feels like it's a downward thing, but I don't know that it is. I think if you can do anything in any of those ways, then it's worthwhile. Not everything is going to be enjoyable all the time, but, you know, Kendra said, I think it's fear of the unknown that, oh, I lost it. I think it's fear of the unknown that makes us stay complacent at times. From experience, the risk has always been worth it. However, it's still scary again the next time. It's hard. Absolutely. It is scary because, you know, I think the fear, though, really does come from the disconnection. I think the fear, if you think about it, all the fear in your life probably is about what other people are going to think about you, if you're going to have enough physical resources like money, like time. Everything that is fear exists in the form, and everything that is form exists in the ego, and everything that is in the ego is therefore unconscious. The light of consciousness, which is the light of God, is the answer to all of these fears, is the answer to all of these things, right? Is the antidote to all of these situations. It really is. You know, Einstein said, I want to know the mind of God. Everything else is just the details. And I think really that means that the mind of God is the consciousness, right? The awareness that we are beings, energetic beings first and foremost. And the details is everything else, the form. How much money do we have? What do we work? Where do we go? What do we this? What do we that? You know, but we haven't lived that way, and our society doesn't see things that way. And we're not programmed that way. So I think understanding that fear is in the unconscious experience, is in the form-based experience, can bring us to that point where we have less fear, but also where when fear comes up, we know that it's something of the physical realm, of the form realm, that is not God, is just a detail. I'm going through fear of change. I'm going to college and won't have the same life that I have now. Yeah, I mean, people are afraid of that change, but ultimately the fear of that change is probably stemming from a fear that you won't be able to take care of yourself, that you don't know what to expect, that you may not have the same niceties, someone might not be taking care of you as much, that you might fail, you might not do well. These are the things that we're afraid of, right? We're not afraid of our being. We're not afraid of these things. Like, the things we're afraid of are always out in the physical world. Like, they're always things. And, I think, not to say it's invalid, and not to say that it is not very powerful, that fear doesn't speak a language we understand and that we're programmed to hear. It's just that when you really look at each fear as it is, and you ask yourself in a big way, am I willing to forsake my purpose on the planet for this fear, right? Most of the time, the answer is no. Am I willing to forsake my connection, my purpose ordained by God for this fear? Not really, right? Am I willing to let the fear that I won't make that much money stop me from going where God is leading me? No. Does that mean I want to be broke? No. But does it mean that ultimately to let this fear control me is to let it take me away from the truth of who I am? And am I really willing to do that? Like, not really. When we start really questioning things in that way, or we start really looking at things in that way, I think God automatically wins that battle each time. Our consciousness wins that battle each time. We realize we have something that's worth protecting, that's worth more than any amount of money or accolade or rank in society. And we really would not, not much we wouldn't do, right? Like, if I told you I could show you your purpose, I could show you the true nature of yourself, and I could show you the real purpose of your life on the planet right now, but it would cost you everything that you have, all your money. Would you be afraid to give it to me? Probably not, because with that purpose, what could you do? You could create anything. You could do anything. You would become limitless in your expansiveness and your ability to manifest and your ability to create, because you'd be moving from such an aligned place, from a place of purpose, that you would know real joy and real movement through your body that wasn't guessing, that wasn't logic, that wasn't a reflection of what somebody told you to be, but is the truth of why you exist on the planet. That's the most valuable piece of information that you can come to grips with. No matter what it costs you, you'll make it back tenfold. And not only will you make it back, you'll actually enjoy and have enthusiasm through the process, right? So I think it's really learning and accepting that key that I'm offering you, I can't tell you what your purpose is on the planet, but you can tell yourself. Your being knows. The part of your being that is connected knows, even in a deeper way than, I want to help people, I want to be a good mom, I want to be a great dentist. Yes, great, fine. But that's not your purpose. That's not why you're here. There's something else. There's a root. There is a message, a purpose, a source code that was hardwired into your energetic function before you were born into this civilization. Right. So it has to kind of supersede civilization and civilization's, ideas and constructs. It can't be of those constructs, because we are not of a construct. We are of nature. We are of God. So our purpose must also be that large. So whatever it costs you, I think you should tune in, and you should start to answer that call, because whatever it costs you in the short term, it's going to pay itself back over the course of your life. You won't be given a purpose that you don't have time to pursue, right? Our time is dictated by the size and scope of the purpose and how long it takes us to get there, I think. So don't be afraid of it and don't shrink away from it, and know that there's nothing wrong with the form and the doing. You should be a good parent. You should be a great dentist, and you should care about having excellence at the things you do. That's fine. But that can't be the be all end all and the whole story of your life on the planet, because it is going to eventually implode and lead to a point where you're like, I don't have fulfillment from these things. And something in me was meant to be expressed, but it never was. And for a lot of people, they don't come to that point until they're at death's door. And that's a little bit too late. So it's much better to make it part of your being now, like don't wait for things to crash and burn. At least, like any good spiritualist would say, if that's the moment of awakening, then that's the perfect moment for you to really come to consciousness. And if it's at your door, at death's door, then so be it. And that's true too. There also, I guess, are no mistakes, but I do believe that we are, especially once we're awakened, we have a choice. We have free will for a reason. We have a decision to make about if we are going to continue to identify with things. The awakening shows you the madness of the world. That's the first thing that you come to contact with. You're like, wait a minute. All this stuff that everyone's doing and all this stuff that I used to pursue actually doesn't mean anything. That's the first thought you have. Why am I doing this? Why do these people care about this? You start to question the construct. Is this true? Is this everything? Your immediate understanding in the moments of awakening is, oh shit, this is a lie. This is a game. This is fuckery. Like that's the first moment, right? And usually anger follows. People are mad. They wake up and then they get real mad. You're telling me that you mean to say that this whole thing isn't it? This is a lie. Like this is not the meaning of life. This is not the purpose of life. Like I got the car, I got the thing, I'm skinny, I got the whole thing you told me was going to be it, and that's not it. Like people are mad and maybe rightfully so. But righteous anger is the worst of all. So I think ultimately, like I said, we can come to grips with the understanding that everything other than understanding ourselves as beings that are more than form, that are more than doing, but as spiritual, energetic beings, starts to implode and starts to go awry at some point, right? We must connect to the limitless nature of the self, the godlike nature of the self, if we have any hope at living a life that is purposeful, that is aligned, right? That is in flow, right? The second we let the ego, or we let, external form-based experience dictate what we're doing and how we're spending these very precious moments of our lives, disaster kind of invariably comes to follow. So I think know and trust the power that you have and the truth of who you are, and that you are what I'm saying that you are. You are an expansive being, much, much, much bigger and more powerful than you understand. Ram Dass says that dying is like taking off a shoe that was too tight. I think he spoke to a monk that would aid death, and that's what he said. He said the monks, he asked the monk, tell us two things about death. The monk said, one, it's perfectly safe. And two, it's like taking off a shoe that's too tight. So I think that's true. Like this physical form is too small for the truth of yourself and for the energy that you have and for the way that this energy will expand and does expand, right? So I think don't limit yourself to the physical form. Let the form just be the vessel through which you bring your formless nature to the planet, not the other way around. Don't try to beat your form. Don't try to prove with form and think that's going to be the key to your purpose, because it isn't. If anything, it's going to take you further from your purpose and from understanding yourself. And you're going to feel more disconnected than ever, not because you are disconnected, but because you have disconnected. right? So points of disconnection are not source disconnecting from you. They are you disconnecting from source. Most spiritualists or religious people will tell you God doesn't turn his back on you. You turn your back on him. He's there all the time, so it's our own choice to come back to truth, to source. And anytime is a good time. Just turn around, just do it differently, see it differently. If you're having an obsession right now with a fact, money, where this, where that, I have the same battle. I'm in the battle of surrender. Part of me that doesn't know where I'm going to live next, or doesn't know, come Tuesday, where this or that. My ego drags me to the future and says, but what now? But what now? But what now? And my intention and my consciousness says, now. This is now, right? Not next. Next is not now. This is now, right? Just come back to the present moment. The present moment has every answer that you need. It is already imbued with your purpose, and it has your connection to everything that you need. Don't worry about the other things. Let them worry about themselves. You will be given inspired information that will lead to inspired action, that will allow you to use the form for the being and not the other way around. You have to just trust it. That's really the only thing we can do is that's, to me, that's the hard part. We are beings that we're taught not to trust. We're taught that the world is scary and dangerous and other people can't be trusted and can't trust anything. And now you're asking me to sit here and wait for a sign, and I don't know. What if I don't get one? What if I'm not that important? It's fear, and it's hard to trust, but I can't say anything other than I promise you it will come. It will come. If you are patient, and if you are persistent, and if you are disciplined in the pursuit of yourself, it will not be withheld from you. So I know the feelings. I know the feeling of well, I just can't stop doing what I'm doing now, and I can't just this and I can't just that. I know that feeling. But feelings and thoughts are just feelings and thoughts. They don't need to be married. They don't need to be anything. I could think anything right now. I could think pink elephant in a polka dot bikini. That's a thought I just had. What does that mean? It's just a thought. I could just let it go. I could say anything. You could also think anything right now. Challenge yourself. You can think anything. Thoughts don't always mean truths. They don't always mean anything. They're just a phenomenon, just a thought. We could think anything we want to think. So, there is something at the bottom of it, though. You are not your thoughts. I say this all the time. Your thoughts, if you think about it, an architect constructs a house. The architect is not the house, because the architect is the builder of the house, right? The architect is the witness. You can see the house, therefore you are not the house. So same thing is true about your thoughts, right? If you can see them, then you can't be them. It doesn't make sense. So you are the architect, you are the creator of the thought, potentially. You are definitely the witness of the thought, but you are not the thought. There is a separation, right? And the more space that comes between awareness and consciousness and thoughts, the more conscious you become, and the easier your life is going to get. Harder first, but ultimately easier. Anybody have any questions for me before we wrap it up? We went really long today. What book did I read a section of? I read a part of A New Earth. Just was looking through the thing. Yeah, A New Earth. I love Eckhart. He does a lot of stuff. I like Ram Dass a lot. People that I listen to. Ram Dass, actually, if any of you have a Gaia subscription, Ram Dass has a really great movie, a movie on I don't know if it's a movie documentary, that's the word I was looking for, called Becoming Nobody, which is a lot about how what I'm talking about really is we spend our whole life kind of trying to become somebody. We're always I got to be this person and that person. I got to wear this and look here and do this. And he says that, true coming to understanding is really kind of becoming nobody. Just understanding yourself as the energy behind all these things. And it's not, again, that we shouldn't have them and we shouldn't play with them. And it doesn't mean don't care about how you look at all. It doesn't mean these things. It doesn't have to go that far. It just means don't let that dictate your life, right? How much of your life is doing first and form first, and then later on we'll worry about these other things. Half the time I'll say to somebody, did you sit quietly with yourself and see what that felt like? I didn't have time. I was busy. Busy doing what? I was doing other stuff. Well, what the hell? How could you be doing other stuff if you don't even know how you feel? You don't even know yourself. What are you doing? You're just out here just robotically doing stuff, right? Like, I'm busy. I can't do the one thing that will lead me to the point where the things that I'm doing actually matter and are aligned. Come on. Rearrange so that you have time. Make time for the thing that matters, you know? Also, I want to tell you guys, I am posting a discount code for you. One of the girls in our program sent us a discount code for some good eco-friendly and sustainable products. So I'm going to drop that discount code in here for you. She said that I could. So keep an eye out for that coming up next. Next month will be a good one. I think we'll have maybe 1 or 2 tutorials drop. I'm playing with the program again. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I do think I am going to try to create a public or free aspect of the program where at least one of my chats every month is just open to the public. So I'm just playing with it. You know me, I'm always trying to like make it better, make it fit better. Still occasionally trying to drop free and public tutorials, all of that stuff. So when they let me out of this cabin, I will do whatever they tell me to do, but those are some of the ideas that they have given me so far. So yeah, I'm excited to integrate some sound healing and sound bowls, and I'll post some fun sound baths for you guys and stuff and all that. I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for being here with me and talking for so long today. Love y'all.